rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He flies off the 5-yard line.
65 horsepower trap. It might pop wide open, Rats.
Is that there, Rats? Oh, nice going, baby. Yes, sir, Rats. High snap. It's no good. The Chargers will win. Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can. The ball flipped forward as loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Just preparing the ball. It is rolled a fumble. Casper is recovered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most seedy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. To my left, that's that way, is Coach Defense. Down directly below is Captain Jack. And down diagonally, which I am not going to even bother to attempt because I think I got to do, I don't know, some messed up thing like that on the camera, is Alex Givens. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
that guy. Yeah, that guy. So
like
just
everyone else
to
gets
kind of
the attempt, but me, I see how it is.
yeah. So just breaking down,
You're not worth the diagonal point, man.
I'm sorry, that's just backwards. But anyways, we all have various channels. You can check out Alex and some of his work at Arrowhead Addict. Coach Defense has his YouTube channel. Please go ahead and search it, all in the description below. And same with Captain Jack. Again, link in the description below. And also, let's not forget, our very own Captain Jack is making best efforts because he wants to be the Raiders play-by-play announcer. So if we could all get behind Captain Jack and see what we can do to make that happen. After all, guys, it's much better having an announcer that actually has respect for your team and your franchise. So we should all want someone like him announcing those games.
Yeah.
And moving on to what we got today, how are we all doing?
Awesome. Another hump day on the books. We it's time to get to the real crux and the greatness of the day in the Wild Wild West podcast. You know, work is one thing; it pays the bills, but you look forward to doing something you love to do. So I'm here and ready to go.
Exactly. And just before we kind of continue around the table here, I just want to shout out to everyone who's joining us live and is in the chat and has made some comments. Wanted to thank Avatar for joining us today. Nice to see you. Broncos breakdown.
Avatar's trying to bring hockey into the chat here. Nope.
Well,
Please, baby, that's all I need to know.
Who?
Yeah. Stanley Cup champs only a few years ago.
Okay. All right. And then we got Anthony. Want to thank you for joining. The one and only Savage Sev. Sev, it's great to see you here. Hope you can stick with us. Love to get your feedback and comments on the rest of the show. Anthony, thank you for joining us. And then, of course, we got the whole attempt there at hockey in the chat. And DZ, good to see you again. I'm Canadian. I'm going to say it properly, the Queen's English.
It's DZ!
Yeah. So, Captain, how are you doing?
Not bad. Rolling in a little bit late. Thunderstorms and activities for tomorrow, which I can't discuss, but I have my show at 9. I will like to say now, if I am late, because Tito gets on my ass if I'm like 30 seconds late. If I am late tomorrow, there is a damn good reason why, and I will tell you afterward because I can't say anything about it right now. That's just the way it is.
He signed the NDA, y'all. He can't talk about it.
Watson on that one.
Basically, yeah.
Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Ready to dive into the AFC West and see what kind of BS you guys try to give me about the Chiefs today. So
hey, BS when it's real, man.
BS.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about you jump into that and start pulling that shovel out of yours, and we can see what you got for the Chiefs.
All right. I guess I can. I mean, I don't got to be doing any shoveling right now. It's for when y'all talk. But you want me to like do one or all three, or what? What do you want me to dive into here?
Let's kind of go from the top and see what you got.
All right. All right. So obviously thinking about going into training camp here. What's going to be the most intriguing positional battles for the Chiefs. Right out the gate, kind of thinking about it, I thought the most important one is going to be right tackle. And in my opinion, it's probably the only actual outright positional battle. Granted, that's kind of the nature of only having 5 guys on the offense. But we talked about the offensive line a couple weeks ago. For as much as you guys didn't want to rank them, we all had to acknowledge the Chiefs had a pretty good offensive line last year.
Sneaky
with right tackle. Well, and they kind of lucked out on some rookies really, turning into homer picks, at least for that first year. We'll see how the sophomore season goes. But, outside of left tackle to right guard, right tackle was, pretty wildly inconsistent in terms of kind of the continuity of the whole unit. They started 3 different guys there last year. I'd say their names and you wouldn't know any of them. One of them is gone now, so they're kind of left with Andrew Wiley and Lucas Niang as people who have at least got some experience starting and playing in games. But neither one of those guys has really kind of, thread the needle, so to speak, to be a proven commodity on an NFL, offensive unit. So there's definitely going to be kind of a battle with those two sort of having, I guess, seniority in terms of playing. But then they drafted this, Darian Kennard guy from Kentucky, who's kind of similar to Trey Smith last year, was projected to be picked 2nd, 3rd round and fell, I think, to the 5th. And with Niang being hurt right now, I think that they're going to pump him into the right tackle spot and it kind of be his spot to lose going into camp. But I think that's going to be interesting to see if they kind of catch lightning in a bottle again and, get a pretty highly touted guy from college and pretty good rated in terms of playing against SEC defenses and see if he makes a starting push.
Interesting. So you think that right tackle will be the Chiefs' primary position battle?
Yeah, I believe so. We've talked about all the pass rushers everyone else has gotten in the league, league and our division.
Right.
And you guys have talked about losing Tyreek and trying to find a new offensive identity, but that's not all start up front. And I think if they can solidify the right tackle spot, then they know they got a solid line to work with for, 2 to 3 years and can kind of, not have to worry about it. But that's going to be the biggest focal point of how successful the offense is if they got a line that can kind of, work well with the scheme.
So you mentioned those other 2 guys. Do you think that the Chiefs are going to try to force Brown, if they can re-sign him and kind of make something work, over to right tackle? Do you think they want him to stick at left?
No, he's staying at left. And that's kind of the big pressing news heading into training camp. But we were kind of talking about it before we started the show, and they got Friday to sign him, but I bet they just franchise tag him. And I said to Coach, if that happens, I see him maybe tagging him 1 or 2 years and then kind of saying, see ya. But they're not moving him because they don't have anyone else to play left. So, who are they going to move to the left if they move him to the right? And they know that he can do that. And he played it last year and played it pretty well for being labeled as a, non-left tackle guy. So I don't think there's any sort of consideration like that. It's going to be between this Kennard rookie and the 2 guys they had that played some games last year. But I think they're going to try to find a reason not to start Andrew Wiley for 17 games.
Sure. So I find that interesting. And who do you have as the Chiefs' second positional battle?
Yeah. So, I kind of prefaced the right tackle saying I thought that was the most outright position battle because, someone's getting sort of the wrong end of the stick on that one. But I put number 2 as wide receiver, mainly because you guys have said it. I think every week we do a show. There's no Tyreek. They've lost their biggest weapon. What the hell are they going to do? And they brought in, 2 guys that are kind of, I guess, proven somewhat receivers in the league. Drafted a guy in the second round and brought in a few others. And there's going to be a pretty big fight for a target share. And, they did lose Tyreek, so it's going to be the first time in a while they're going into camp without a true number 1 guy on their roster that they know is the number 1 guy. So, I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see how, who fights or who either carves out the number 1 role for themselves, or who among, 2 or 3 of these guys kind of encompasses what would have been Tyreek's 159 targets, and maybe they got like a 1A, B, and a 2 guy. But it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out going into camp in the preseason. And I know they're going to probably move guys around and do different rotations and see what fits. But I mean, anytime you got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I don't doubt that they'll be able to kind of keep the progression going in terms of the passing offense. It's just going to be interesting to see who's sort of riding along.
So interesting on that, guys. Coach, what are your thoughts since, Alex has taken a healthy dose of, we'll call it the poking of the bear, if you will, with regards to the wide receiver issue there in KC. What are your thoughts on the wide receiver position battle and the fact that Alex is right? We are talking quite literally a coin flip in terms of and again, I'm talking the true wide receiver position, not Kelsey, who is a tight end who's playing wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I actually would like to get Alex's take on who he thinks in his own mind, his own Chiefs mind, who's gonna be the number 1 receiver at the end of camp.
I'd like to hear that, kid.
Huh?
At the end of camp?
Yeah, by the end of camp.
I don't think there's going to be a clear number. I think that's going to come out like week 4 or 5. But my guess is they're going to have you're going to see a lot of sets of Juju and Valdez-Scantling on the outside, and then they're going to work in Hardman a little bit, but I think they're going to try to do Sky Moore and Hardman more in the slot and kind of get quick hits, get them out and let them run. But I saw someone comment Juju like that was a joke, but I've said it before, for him to get paid the money his contract is labeled as, he has to have like some pretty ridiculous stats. And I mean, for being in the league, I think this is his 5th year. He's only, I don't think he's 25 yet, so he's still relatively young.
In the league at 21.
And I think that there's some potential, I think he's still got stuff left in the tank, and that he was kind of held back by a drastically decreasing Ben Roethlisberger and kind of what they could do with his arm. So I think that's going to be also interesting to see how he does with someone who can push the ball downfield better and is more accurate, and if that sort of brings him back to, the Juju we saw the first 2 years that everyone thought was going to be the next greatest thing. But I think in the long run, I don't think that there will. I think that you're going to see sort of, Kelsey's going to probably lead the team in targets. And then I think between the receivers, you're kind of going to see a hodgepodge of people that are sitting around like 60 to 80, and they're spreading the ball out a little bit more. Is that about Ross? Yeah, that's a guy, I don't think he'll push immediately for targets, but Justin Ross is definitely a sleeper guy to watch, to kind of carve out some little role and then, end up being kind of the next thing there. Cause he, I'm trying to think of I think it was a spinal thing that caused him not to get drafted. But I mean, you guys saw the national championship game when he went off, and then every mock draft you saw that was way too early had him going top 5. And then he goes undrafted and ends up in one of the better offensive positions you can be in the NFL. And that's something to kind of, I wanted to consider with the wide receiver group. I think someone who's been there is going to get kicked out, like Josh Gordon or someone else or Fountain. I think they're going to end up cutting someone to keep one of these younger guys and kind of see if they can change their identity passing the ball.
That was
that's kind of a long way to answer it, but I really think that they're going to try to spread the ball out more. Obviously, the passing game will go through Kelsey just because he's been a proven commodity in the passing attack. But I think that the focus is like, well, if we can't sign Tyreek, let's get a good trade pack, some trade capital to rebuild. And, because you hear them all when they talk in training camp interviews about how they want to spread the ball out more. So I really think that's going to be a big focal point. And if there's going to be a number one, it's going to be because that approach didn't work. And then they're like going back to the drawing board in week 5 and seeing how they can change the approach again.
Right. And Savage actually said something I want to bring up is that I'm very curious. I think this is a put up or shut up year for Juju. Because you becoming more famous for your TikToks than your production. Yeah, so I think that he gets paid this year based on his production, or he gets the journeyman role.
Yeah.
At this point, so if he shows up and he shines and can legit prove that he could be a number 1-esque receiver, then he'll find some money somewhere. Maybe not in KC, but he'll find some money somewhere. But if he doesn't, we just can kind of put the tag on it that you can be a good Robin, but you never be a Batman.
Yeah,
good deal. So I think that from that perspective, I think it could lend to the Chiefs' credit or their benefit if they kind of are mysterious about who their number 1 receiver is. It could be a different week to week, so you really don't know who the game plan or scheme before. So that might be a good. I don't want to give the Chiefs any credit for doing anything right, but I would definitely say that.
I think that is the approach.
Football, just from a football perspective, that they are mysterious about who their number 1 guy is, and you don't know it week to weekend. You just kind of go into it saying that we just got to play him honest. Then that'll lend to the idea that offense can be more productive. So I
saw a lot of defenses play him especially last year. Too high with someone always staying over the top of Hill.
Correct.
For whatever reason, they didn't want to play out of that. They kept wanting to try to do stuff that fit right into that scheme.
Right.
But I think that they kind of went back after this year is like, where did everything go wrong? And I think that was a big thing was like, we didn't have anything else to do. So,
right.
So let's try to change that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm very interested to see, because I think I guess Valdez-Scantling getting away from Aaron Rodgers is a thing. I think he has to see if he can be that guy or a guy away from Aaron. Same thing with Juju. Can he be a guy away from Antonio Brown and Ben? And I wonder would Scott Moore be more of the slot guy or more of a special teams guy, because he can do both.
He's a slot guy,
slot guy.
College state, he's just he's kind of like a Renfro type of receiver, like just quick one cut, balls there, boom. Don't expect me to really get a lot of rack, but
right. Yeah, and he plays special teams too. If I'm not mistaken, right? He plays special teams too. So will he make his mark special teams early, and then kind of find his niche later in the offense, or will he hit right away? Of course, we want to know if Ross is going to be good. Based upon his injury history. So it's a lot of question marks, but will Andy figure it out, and especially with your schedule being brutal early, will he be able to figure it out on the fly? I guess about how the offense is going to look now.
I saw Savage also said they don't have speed anymore, and I just wanted to address that because he's partially wrong.
See that.
They don't have Tyreek speed anymore, but I mean they still got Hardman, and Valdez-Scantling was actually the second fastest player last year behind Tyreek, and him and Tyreek were the only 2 clocked to run over 22 miles per hour.
He did run a
4.34, so he's like kind of a
he runs a 4.340. So
I think they do got speed. Is it the same as Tyreek Hill? Probably not, but I think it's unfair to say they lost speed. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so Captain, curious as to where you're at with everything on the Chiefs, with kind of what Alex said, what we've said. If you have anything to kind of jump in with in terms of, do you think Hardman might be a trade option for the Chiefs because they clearly haven't been really high on him? Do you think that Juju is going to find his calling more so on TikTok and then quit the NFL? Like, where do you think things are going to land for them?
Him and Jackson Mahomes.
I think Juju Smith-Schuster is going to find himself the owner of several Japanese massage parlors as his true calling.
Yeah, all right.
What?
Real big into the reference bag there.
You're right. Yeah.
I think that Andy Reid
Here we go.
will definitively retire to do what he's wanted to do for years, and that's have a franchise for
In-N-Out Burger.
Well, you know what?
We got Whataburger up there now.
No. He's going to go to Fat Burger.
Oh, okay.
Big boy.
Big boy. I was going to say big.
No, not Big Boy. Fat Burger, because Fat Burger is a really great chain. And when you think of Andy Reid, you think of Fat Burger. So I mean, it just writes itself.
Yeah, I think you got a point, Alex. I think there's been a Tyreek Hill and a Andy Reid reference every podcast. I just want to point that out.
There has been. You know, I don't make this stuff up when I bring it into my, points of address here.
Yeah.
You know what? And I hate beating a dead horse, but I think that there was another speed receiver in the AFC West that did himself a disservice, and now it's going to be definitively locked away for several years. So don't forget that.
Yeah.
Well, those are,
so
apples to oranges comparison there. One was traded, one,
I know, yeah.
Very poor judgment, but
it incredibly stupid.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sugarcoating it at all. It's incredibly stupid and selfish. And I'm sorry to say that hurts a lot. But that's I'm gonna get off the soapbox on that one. But remember, there was another guy. But and actually Dominic Maldonado actually said something that is true. Marquise Valdes-Scantling has the speed. He just can't catch a cold.
Damn.
Yeah. I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know. We'll see. I feel like he didn't ever get to carve out kind of a good target share in Green Bay to really know. Like, he wasn't given the opportunity to like prove.
Well, that's because he was surprised every time they friggin' threw him the ball that he was, oh my God, they threw it to me, and he dropped it. It's like, don't throw it to Stonehand.
He had. I know that.
Nice, unnecessary reference.
He doesn't have a good catch percentage. I'll give you that. He had 55 targets last year. He caught 26 of them.
Wow.
For 47%. But at the same time, like 55 targets, not that much.
Not even 50%. Not even 50%. 47%.
As a wide receiver, that's
graded on a curve.
A lot of confidence.
Yeah. If you're grading him on a curve, the curve better be like a friggin' Playboy model or a Hustler model, okay? Or an Instagram chick, okay? Because they're curvy.
OnlyFans, I think, is more,
Did we just give him a new nickname? Marquise OnlyFans.
Yeah, OnlyFans.
I kind of like it.
What
do you think?
Wow.
So I think that's interesting. And Alex, just to round out the Chiefs for everyone joining us today, what's your third position battle for the team there?
There was a lot of them I wanted to consider, but I figured since I already talked about two offensive ones, I should shift one to the defense. So I put my third as the cornerbacks. Mainly because it's just going to be because they brought in like 7 guys this offseason. I think they're going to end up keeping 6. But, you got 7 to fight for 2, maybe 3 spots. And it's obviously apparent that they don't have a lot of faith in what was there or what was left after Travarius Ward and
Sorensen?
Well, Sorensen was. I'm trying to think of the other corner that left. I cannot remember his.
Well, Matthew was a safety though, but
yeah. Well, yeah, they lost him too. But I'm more so cornerback side of it. I mean, they lost like a very good percentage of the people that played in their nickel and defensive back.
I know who you're talking about. What is his name?
He was on Minnesota. he's like a freaking bust. Like he was taken in the first round. I just cannot think of who it was.
He is so fantastic. We all forget his name.
He's so good. You don't even know he's there. Mike Hughes. That was it.
That's it. That's it.
But, so obviously they drafted Trent McDuffie in the first round. So him and Snead are locks to get a bulk of it. Rashad Fenton's still there. But I don't think he's necessarily guaranteed anything outside of a roster spot. And I mean, outside of those guys, they got two guys they drafted. They traded for Lonnie Johnson, who was taken in the second round. They got DeAndre Baker, who was a first-round pick by the Giants, whatever that means. And then a couple undrafted guys. So, I mean, that's still 6 other people that are fighting for 2, maybe 3 spots. So it's going to be pretty interesting. And some of them, have a pretty good, I guess, college resume, not necessarily pan out in the NFL yet. But it's going to be interesting to see what ends up being the final 5, 6 guys to kind of engulf the whole defensive back room. I wanted to talk about safeties too, but because they did draft a few and signed Deion Bush and brought in Justin Reed. But I think obviously the writing was more on the wall with that, just given there's only 2 spots and they lost 2. So probably the guys they signed in free agency are going to get first grabs to mess up not playing. So more so corner was more of the intriguing battle for me going into camp, just to see, sort of similar to the receivers, kind of who carves out a role or at least some share in maybe special down packages, just to be in the kind of the coverage unit.
Okay.
Are you concerned that you don't have like clear-cut guys?
I mean, no, not at this.
And I'm not trying to necessarily, completely dog the Chiefs here either. But
you got to
coming from, so for example, when we had lesser than quarterbacks in the Broncos who were not performing or would kind of make boneheaded decisions or whatever the case may be, or we saw offensive coordinators not, putting our players in the best spots possible.
Yeah.
Really what that came down to a lot of the time was the fact that some of the players on the team were not clear-cut winners over, say, the other guy behind them. And it was just whichever one kind of the coaches felt comfortable with kind of won that job. And it sounds a lot like what you're saying, both wide receiver-wise, which I think is going to be fascinating this year, to be quite honest. I think from a position group, that's the most interesting. And but then also your cornerbacks, though.
Yeah.
Is you're relying on a rookie who may or may not hit right away to be your starter at the nickelback position in Trent McDuffie. Now, don't get me wrong, his pedigree coming in is at a, it's right up there. So I think it's a fair bet to
well, he's going to get tested right out of the gate. I mean,
for sure.
He's going to attack the first round corner pick and prove himself immediately. So it could very well go downhill pretty fast.
Yeah, and then if that happens, then you're going to have a rookie that's trying to overcome the mental math of the NFL, and that can so easily tank a rookie's career.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just right off the top, you can literally deflate a guy and then he's gone.
Yeah, I've always said, I mean, that's really any position, but I mean, if you get drafted in the wrong situation, you're not going to be there for, unless something magically pans out, you just know you're not going to make it 1, 2, 3 years.
Right.
Just how fast paced the roster, the turnover and everything is. But I'm not overly like, is it the best? Is that the best topic I want to be talking about going into training camp? Like who's going to be the round out the defensive backs, especially when they lost. I think every person that left, either they just didn't sign back or free agency. They all played at least 60% of the defensive snaps or more. So there's kind of a lot of turnover in the secondary, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think they kind of needed a little to inject, some youth and some more athleticism to some of the guys that have just kind of been like okay performers, but not over the top. The one I'm more concerned about is not having Tyrann Mathieu back, because that guy, and I know I've said it before, but he's he's a lot more than just a safety. And even though he is older, he's just a very instinctual player. And like you could tell, like many dudes say that all the time, like about how he preps for each opponent every week, how he knows what's going on, like how he can make kind of audibles and adjustments on the fly. And I think that's going to be a bigger
players on the field.
Yeah. And
right?
I mean, you
helping the other guys on the field.
Like, I mean, there was countless plays where he just knew like this is what they're doing. He beat the ball carrier to like where he needed to make his cut just because he like knew what was going on.
Right.
And I know they signed Justin Reed with the ideology that he's the same type of guy, which athletically speaking he is. I just don't know if instinctually speaking he is. And I think that's going to be a bigger hurdle for them to overcome than they want to think it is.
You can't coach what Tyrann Mathieu did for that defense. You can't.
No, and I mean that's why he's 5'8", $180, and has been in the league for 10 years and still gets paid. Every time he's a free agent because he's just an instinctual. Like you can't coach that. You can coach size. You can't coach. You can't coach size, and you can't coach instincts.
There it is.
He didn't have the size, but he definitely knows how to play defense and get people in position. And I think that's going to be the biggest downfall loss for this next year.
Understood.
So, Coach, we've broken down the Chiefs' 3 position battles. I think those are good ones. I was hoping that you were going to bring up the wide receiver, and
absolutely.
And I mean, to me, that's that's the slam dunk no brainer. I happen to agree with all 3 of your position battles for the Chiefs. Captain, I'm hoping to maybe throw it over to you if at all possible. As I understand it, you're in a potential thunderstorm situation, so I'd love to get your feedback just in case lightning strikes and you have to sign off.
Okay, well, first off, I think that the Raiders need a nickelback.
Is that Kevin Gates?
It was Future.
Is that Nickelback?
You gonna get a strike, Cap. Cap, you gonna get a
strike. You gotta stop that.
Yeah, you gonna get a YouTube strike, don't? Yeah, cut that off. Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, as soon as you said Nickelback, I said, yeah, man, it's a Nickelback. Okay. And yes, I don't mind saying I like Nickelback. In fact, that song.
Everyone does.
That song is my favorite. When you say, I like the pants around your feet, you can't get lyrics like that. I love the dirt that's on your knees. Come on. Anyway, so yeah, the Raiders need a Nickelback. Not really, but I think that the biggest battles with the Raiders, and I'm very sorry to say this, there's big questions at the quarterback position. I think that there's going to be, I have no clue who's going to be playing quarterback for the Raiders. I really don't know who's going to be their wide receiver number 1 because, I don't think that they've done anything to address that. And, I think that I can come in there and be their kicker. So it's quarterback, wide receiver 1, and kicker, and nickelback. Okay.
Need Janikowski back or whatever his name is.
Wow. Good one, D. Wow, good one.
I like the pants around. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, that was a good one. I saw a meme that saw 2 officers putting a trash can in the back of an armored, locked armored car, and the caption was Derek Carr got arrested.
I mean, yeah.
That's not even worth a sugar to boom. Not even a sugar to boom.
I thought it was funny.
Honestly, the weirdest part about that is if I saw a news story that said Derek Carr got arrested, my first gut reaction is I need that confirmed by about 13 different sources.
Yeah, he's the last.
Because honestly, what do you think he's getting arrested for? It's got to be like tax evasion. It's got to be something real.
No, it'd be like Derek Carr was arrested because he was
tax fraud. Yeah, tax
fraud. College admission scandal. He paid a bunch of money for his kid to get into USC. That's what it would be.
Actually, it's probably what it probably would be is, and this happens all the time. is they confused Derek with his brother David.
True.
And it
Yeah,
said
man,
Derek
I'm
Carr
really
gets
glad.
arrested. And then you flip
Only by name, because they don't look alike. They don't look
No,
alike at all. Only by name.
They don't. And that's the
Only by
thing. And
name.
people tell me, hey, well, so I see I see David got a good increase in salary this year. I'm like, who?
Derek.
Your quarterback, David Carr. And I just want to, do that every time. But yeah. Now, for all kidding aside, okay, we all know.
Oh, you were kidding.
No, about the position battles. Okay.
I thought Jared Stidham had a shot at
serious.
Yeah, Jared
I
Stidham.
agreed with all those.
Yeah, well, I know that because you're easy.
Jared Stidham QB1.
Yeah. Actually, no, there was something that I saw that was really intriguing. He said Raiders may trade quarterback they just traded for.
Okay.
And that's Stidham. So
nobody wants Stidham?
Well, it's one of those things where we'll see. The position
2014.
battles. Hey, Alex, what's the first position battle that you think that the Raiders have, because you kind of alluded to it earlier?
Corner?
No.
Right tackle?
Bingo. Now I'm going to do an offshoot. I'm going to pull a coach defense on this. Okay. I'm going to kind of do the homework assignment, but I'm going to enthrall you with a bunch of bull crap that I throw in here just to confuse you. Okay.
Okay. We call
Michael Scott knows.
bull crap now. Okay.
You're starting a sentence and you hope you find the ending. I respect that.
The thing is, that is true to a point. But the Raiders actually have questions on 4 spots in their offensive line, minus their left tackle, because their left tackle is locked down, Colton Miller. Everybody else, you think you kind of know, but not really. The Raiders have questions at both guards, with Denzel Good being out last year in the very first game, and he was a stalwart at the guard position. They brought in Jermaine Illuminor, who's a swing for everything. Simpson was in there last year, and he was not the greatest. You don't have Richie Incognito. So if you look at the depth chart for the Raiders at guard, okay, right now it's listing John Simpson as the starter, and I don't agree with that. Okay. You have, like I said, the guards here, you got Simpson, you got Alex Bars, who he signed from the Bears, Lester Cotton, who was in Last Chance University, so some guy named Jordan Meredith, who I can guarantee you ain't gonna make the team, because a better chance would be with Thayer Munford, the kid that's out of Ohio State, which they drafted, and Denzel Good. But herein lies the rub, is that they're still not quite set on what's going on at center. Andre James came on at the very end last year, but they did draft Dylan Parham with their first round, or their first pick, not in the first round, but their first pick in the third round. And I think Dylan Parham eventually will be in at the center position. I think they're grooming him to be that center. And that's kind of like a question. Well, what do you do with Andre James? I think Andre James would be good enough to maybe move to one of those guard spots. I know I would play Andre James at left guard before I would play John Simpson there. And the other thing is that, and we were talking about it at the Raider Race show the other day, he had Denzel Good at right guard where he had Jermaine Illuminor at left guard, because he does know the system. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I would flip-flop, and maybe I'd go Denzel Good at left guard, Jermaine Illuminor, because he is more of a right guard in the system. But the Raiders have a lot of questions along the offensive line. It's not just Alex Leatherwood. So, yes, there is a right guard problem, but I think it's more of the Raiders with Carmen Brasili are going to trot out the best 5 guys, and don't be surprised if it's not who we think it is at the time.
I have a question for you, Captain. I'm going to throw out some names and positions. I'm curious as to your thoughts. Colton Miller, left tackle.
Yes.
Alex Leatherwood at left guard. Andre James at center. Denzel Good at right guard, and Jermaine Illuminor as your right tackle.
Wouldn't be unhappy with that. And the reason why I say that,
would that shock you at all to have that as your starting five?
No, because Alex Leatherwood played left side at Alabama and played rather well.
Right.
What about Brandon Parker? Is he just a lost cause?
Brandon Parker, he must have incriminating photos of
It's been a third
Davis.
round pick on him. That's why.
Yeah.
Keep him around.
Yeah, and again, everybody is very high on him as the swing tackle, but and I'm gonna name drop here. I'm gonna name drop here. My very good friend Lincoln Kennedy was very high on Brandon Parker until he actually watched a lot of the games, because he was sitting there as the color commentator for the Raiders on their radio broadcast, and even he could not just contain his disdain for Brandon Parker.
Wasn't he drafted because, didn't his draft stock go up because he ran like a fast 40? I feel like that always happens. Like, there's always some offensive lineman that runs like a 4.8, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, we got to pick him!" Like, and
yeah,
I think
he's got all the measurables: speed, strength, all the things. And I've told it, and I said this on my show. I said this on my show. It's the swinging doors that we have. The Broncos have a swinging door at right tackle, and even Richie knows that. He's swinging doors, man. It's the wild, wild west. And that is why if Brandon Parker plays it down starting this year, I'm going to be very upset. So the camp battles are going to be who are the Raiders going to have on the offensive line game one. And do not be surprised if they go through about iteration version 2.0 and 3.0 by the end of the season, because as the kids get better suited, and you might have people like Bam Olaseni, who's like, you can't teach size and speed, and the kid is like 6'8", 3'4" bills. And maybe he will be the right tackle of the future. Maybe it's Mumford who played rather well at Ohio State. But I have a feeling that you're going to see a Bam eventually. You're going to see Mumford eventually. You're going to see Parham in there. I think that Leatherwood, they're going to go with Leatherwood somewhere, unless he really just sucks so bad that he's the swing everything. I don't know. But the thing is that he was such a damn good player at Alabama, and he played against the best players, because the SEC is the best conference in college football. I'm sorry, they are. So when you have a guy that is an All-American at Alabama and just could do things like that, give him an opportunity. Remember, it took a little while for Colton, but people were pissed off at Colton Miller. And they said that it was a busted waste pick. I want to see what Leatherwood can do, but don't be surprised. Illuminor is going to be in the mix. You're going to have Denzel Good, who I think will be playing some at guard, but maybe at the beginning, but maybe not towards the mid season. So that's the question. That is a camp battle. The Raiders will have the best 5 out there, and I think that they're going to be a lot better than what y'all give us credit for. And again, it'll be a transitional thing by the end of the season as well. Alex, you keep going like this.
Oh, that's just a nervous tick I have. It's when I'm about to make a point. It just kind of builds up, and then I spew it out.
Oh man!
Do you think though?
There's nothing else. That was hilarious.
If the rotation doesn't work out like they planned, do you think they go sign one of these older unsigned guys like an Eric Fisher, Dwayne Brown, or like someone like that to plug in at right tackle and move Leatherwood inside if some of these other guys aren't kind of working up?
It's possible. It's possible. And DZ said it best. I teed you up. Providing that.
Well, they got to be able to play the car if he has no time to throw to the weapons.
Well, if you would allow me to finish, you stinking bastard. Okay, if you would have Derek Carr that has maybe 3 seconds of time, and he hits Waller or Adams or Renfro or Keenan Cole. And that's a mini battle, is who's going to be that third receiver between Cole and Robinson and the old Charger who I like, Tyron Johnson. Okay. There's some good players that could be, that's a kind of like a mini battle in between, but not enough to mention. But if you give him 3 seconds, you remember years ago, Derek Carr was like, what they were clocking him at like 2.7. Boom. 2.6. Boom. 3.1 was long, but he was still getting the ball out. And if he could look around and see some of these guys open and they keep chopping it up, and then you get the running game going, that will help the offensive line immensely. It will.
Derek Carr was 12th in the stat that you're wanting there.
No, I'm talking about 2 years ago. He was like
when he was in the Amelia.
No. You're referring to time to throw, which is basically the quarterback's time that he has to throw the ball within the pocket that he has. That's the advanced analytics stat, and Derek Carr in 2021 was ranked 12th in terms of time to throw. So,
I was going by the stat that he had the quickest release 2 years ago, and he was top 7, if I'm not mistaken, at least the top quarter of the NFL, getting the ball out fastest.
Sure,
that's kind of McDaniel's bag too, though. I mean, he
yes.
Kind of, I feel like quick twitch, like one step, one read, get rid of it. So it might pan out.
Yeah, it's possible. I think what the challenge will be is when you're starting to talk about Adams. So Adams is a kind of a multi-move style wide receiver, and some of his best plays have come off of, we'll call it play extensions.
Right, second and third move.
Right, second, third move. Waiting for the quarterback to elude the rush, whatever that kind of thing comes from. And that's kind of the one thing that you don't typically think of Derek Carr as being that guy. You typically don't see Derek Carr or think of Derek Carr as being the guy that's shimmy shaking away from the pass rush. He seems to be, we'll say, closer to, let's say, like a Tom Brady style mold where he can move around the pocket, but he typically doesn't do things.
He doesn't stray beyond the pocket for the most part.
Right, exactly. And so as a result of that, when you start having pocket breakdown, Carr is often a little bit more impacted than, say, someone like a Herbert, who is quite mobile given his size, someone like Russell Wilson, who's kind of known for those types of plays over the course of his career. Even Patrick Mahomes is kind of annoying that way, but he also does some of the same things. So I think that, looking at one of the deficiencies there in the camp battles, CW, thank you for joining us, buddy. I really appreciate you coming in and showing us some love. Go ahead and give the video a like, and if you happen to want to share it, that would be awesome for us too, to help grow additional audience members.
Buddy Jesus, baby.
And thank you very much for joining. But I actually think that all of the AFC West teams have a couple of these position battles that, if you are going to be honest, should be concerning for all of us.
Yeah. And I haven't even gotten into defense. I just threw out the offense.
So let's toss you over to the other two.
Okay, so I don't like being tossed. Okay, let's just get that right there.
Well, I might be the only person that can, but
no, I think of other bad things. But anyway, the other position battles, and it's going to be because of Graham. We really don't know. And I like the fact that our defensive coordinator is multifaceted, multitasking, will come out, change plays, series to series, half to half. We don't know if they're going to have 10 defensive linemen and 5 linebackers, or 5 defensive linemen and 10 linebackers eventually. It's not going to happen this year, but there's going to be that transition there. So the front 7 is a mess as far as they're going to figure out who can play multi-tiers outside rush, outside like a scheme, robber positions, different things like that. Because you got the guys that are going to be out. That Chandler Jones and Max Crosby and Coons are going to play on the outside in a rush. Okay, that's probably it. But then they're going to say, okay, well, maybe we need something with Malcolm Coons, the second-year guy who I really like. Maybe we need to throw him in the back a little bit more. So maybe he's an outside linebacker or like maybe a linebacker stacked behind Crosby and Chandler Jones in one of those things. So there's a lot of things that are not really known, okay? And if you talk to me about the Raiders linebackers, the only ones that I know in my estimation that are going to make the team is Denzel Perryman and Divine Diablo. Everybody else is we'll see. Because
Can we just
I
talk
really
about
don't
that
know.
name? Divine Diablo might be like the best name.
It's up
Like,
there.
Like it's got to be within like the top
But-
echelon of names in the NFL. Like that is
It's like Crevis Munguvis
Our
or whatever.
previous Mingo, that one was good.
My favorite at the moment is Laviscus Chenault.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I like that name is always catchy to me.
Yeah, but no, Divine does have the
Diablo.
Divine name.
Yeah.
that's
That's
spectacular.
a hell of a name for a linebacker too. That's
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
the whole, but it's gonna be more like
got
Diablo
position
through
and
the
name.
coverage.
He's got position and name that just line up perfectly, right? So,
Right.
So Captain, so over to you. Basically, what you're saying is that you think that kind of the D line / linebacker is going to be a bit of an interesting battle, but not maybe necessarily for some of the reasons that we might otherwise think. You're saying that because your scheme is flexible,
Yeah.
that you're basically saying that would either mean that either interior or kind of those other positions, DNs, for example, may well turn into outside linebackers. So therefore, you may start pulling in more D tackles, for example, because you'll use DNs as outside linebackers instead of having a beefier position group at that level.
Right. In fact, they had like Cleve Farrell was saying, by the way, you're going to be an outside linebacker this year. Cleve Farrell might not even make the team. Okay. And and I really think that the Raiders are probably going to shop him at the end of camp for somebody that wants a decent player, because in Graham's scheme, he might not be all that in the biscuit. And that's unfortunate because Cleve Farrell was a very good player as a cog of the a cog in the machine at Clemson when you had all four of those guys go like top two. Okay. All the defensive line were fantastic parts of a machine, but Cleve never got that status. And that's not because he sucked, but we'll see.
But then they took him third overall. So, I mean.
Yeah. And that's what I said. And Matt Marinovich said about it, we're going to change every week. And I'm going to go from here to my final positional battle. Even though there's questions at safety, I'm going to focus more on the cornerback position, because that's really, we don't know what's going to go on with our cornerbacks. Trayvon Mullen had surgery like right after the draft, which was kind of to the Raiders, hey, I'm not going to tell you I need surgery till after the draft till we figure out what's going on here. And there's been a question mark. And let me get my Orlads out, because I want to make sure that I get all of these guys on the thing. Other than Rock Yassin, who we traded for, so I think that there's a good opportunity him for being there. Anthony Averett, who I love from Baltimore, I think he's going to have a good chance of coming in the mix as well. Will it be Rock Yassin and Anthony Averett and maybe Nate Hobbs on the outside, who is better? He's better suited right now and was probably the top one or two slot cornerbacks last year. But will he be so good that maybe they throw him on the outside with Rock Yassin and Anthony Averett? And, who's going to be there? Darius, the kid that we picked up from Cincinnati, he's definitely going to be back there returning punts, but maybe he will be all that in a biscuit. Alec Robertson I wish I could give the kid, 2 inches of height, and he would be a spectacular cornerback, but he's just very undersized, but he can cover everybody. So the Cornerback position is still up in the air as well. And who's to say that Mullen, because Mullen's kind of been injured the last couple years with nagging things that have kept him out. We're going to need to know who our cornerbacks are from jump. And don't count on Mullen to be healthy the entire year. That's why it's going to be up to Averett. It's going to be up to Hobbs. It's going to be up to Rock Yassin. It's going to be up to the kid from that we picked up from the Bengals. It's going to be jumbled. And that's a positional battle that I can't begin to tell you who's going to be on the team cornerback-wise. I think Yassin for sure, and I like the fact that he was a wrestler. I like the fact this kid will ball out and will be there. I like Anthony Averett. I really do. I think he's going to be there. But beyond that, we'll see.
I think that's fair.
That's another good name too, Rock Yassin.
With your we'll call it expertise, looking at the performance and given the fact that at least most of those names have either started or started enough at the NFL level. What are your thoughts on the defensive backfield, which is what Captain's kind of talking about there? What are your thoughts on the Raiders' defensive backfield at the cornerback spot?
Well, I think what he underscored gives me a lot of pause and a lot of uncertainty in regards to who is going to play and where. You want to, as a coach, you want to go into a camp or a season kind of having a general idea of who's going to be where in your key position.
Yeah.
You know, so the idea of it's kind of like a dice roll about who's going to play interior. Only thing that's supplanted for sure in this defense is the edge rushers. We know Chandler Jones and Max Crosby are edge rushers. We're not sure if Jayon Brown is going to play middle. We don't know if Denzel Perriman is going to play middle or outside. I would say Denzel more of outside. I think Jayon's can run better, so he would be more of an outside backer to me, but they haven't listed as inside. So, you know, again, the Trayvon Mullen thing, the injury late, you know, his surgery late is going to impact his availability for camp, so that's going to set him back. I think Rock Yassin, to me, is only the true, you know, I guess you can say number one corner that you have with Mullen's not being, you know, necessarily available, and everybody else is kind of like, you know, it just depends on what kind of camp they have. So it gives me pause and it leaves me, make me have a lot of sleepless nights and not know exactly what we're gonna look like day to day and week to week. And then when injuries play into that, that makes it even more uncertain. So that particular, I guess you can say, problem that you have, you know, necessarily it makes me have a lot of questions. But I do see it from a coaching perspective. I do see a lot of promise in this particular defense if you do it right. Like I said, I think Jayon Brown is a great outside backer. He should play outside. Denzel should play inside. I think that if you have Mullen healthy and Everett healthy, along with Yassin, those are your top three corners. I think that you could do yourself a favor and get you another cover safety and put Abrams in a box more and leave him in.
I'm sorry, Coach. I think Gillespie is that guy because Gillespie is more of a cover corner than Abram is. Abram's a box guy. Don't put him back there. You're just gonna or throw it to Kelsey. He'll be wide open for a touchdown. And that still pisses me off to this day. But I'm sorry. I need to say that.
Yeah, and be multi with your defensive front. Like I said, we know Max Crosby and Chandler Jones are going to be outside guys, but I'm high on. A lot of people don't.
Is Crosby going to be outside?
Yeah,
he was a D end. He was never an outside backer, right? He was always playing that.
Well, yeah, he just means like rushing.
I'm talking about rushing from a rushing perspective. He's going to be
sure. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
So, you know, so looking at base sets and rushing overall, he's going to be the outside guy. So. But I'm big on the guys they picked up late in the draft. I'm big on Neil Farrell Jr. and I'm big on Matthew Butler. I think they're definitely big, strong, massive men to move in the middle. Like, you know, I'm sure that I think he measured up. Farrell's been like 330 pounds. I think Matthew Butler's like 325. You know, I mean, they have been hard pressed to move him and move these guys in college. So I would like to believe it's going to be similar in the NFL. So if I'm going to, you know, hitch my wagon to somebody that can stop the run at least on early downs, I will put those guys in the middle, and then maybe pick up a Ndamukong. I keep messing his first name up, Ndamukong Suh, as a third down guy to make him help rush the passer up the middle with Crosby and Chandler Jones. But again, just settling that uncertainty is my biggest problem with the Raiders defense. You settle that uncertainty for me, and I know what you guys are bringing to the table. Even if you're going to be multi with your fronts, then I will feel much better about their productivity.
I think those are all absolutely fair comments. Looking at kind of things in general, though, I am concerned that if you don't give Hankins the shot and keep Farrell in the interior and look at, say, Vernon Butler, you're then starting to get thin if you start to shimmy other guys in and you start limiting those larger guys in the interior, because you start limiting your availability of some of the depth at that spot. For example, I know that those of you who don't know, Kyle Pecco used to be on the Denver Broncos.
Mhm.
Pecco is the cousin of
Dominic Pecco.
Dominic Pecco, or
The other Pecco.
I always mess up his name, the other Pecco.
Right.
So,
Pecco.
so clearly there's a pedigree within the family. And if you actually saw Kyle Pecco play when he was with the Broncos, he played really well when you saw him on the field. He was also picked up by New England. And I'm not a huge fan of all these people just slamming him because he's kind of been a bit of a journeyman. He's effectively the perfect cog in the right defense, which is dead perfect for a New England style team where you have a GM and a coach that come from that particular franchise, where they look at guys for the holes and roles that they fill, not necessarily saying we want you to do everything. And so I think that's another guy to think of. And Coach, with your analysis of all the defensive stuff, I'd like to throw over to you for your top 3 position battles for the Chargers.
I got to give Coach this because I love him now.
Now again, to your lead in, you would believe likely and most likely based upon my name and your lead in there, but it would be mostly defensive battles. But honestly, it's only one defensive battle that I have listed on my top 3. I'm gonna start with the offense. Actually, I think that the number 3 receiver is a position battle that we should watch in camp. I guess you can say the incumbent would be Jalen Guyton. But we did draft Josh Palmer in the draft in the middle rounds of the draft last year, and he's had an excellent OTAs from all reports coming out of OTAs and early preseason work that he's had in this particular cycle. So I would say that him and Jalen Guyton is going to fight for that number 3 role. And it's and if they're going to fight for number 3 role, it's going to be a good problem to have, that whoever's going to fall into that number 4 role is still going to be a viable, 3B, I guess you can say. So I would say that for sure, Guyton and Palmer fighting for that number 3 receiver spot is going to be the one that I think that's going to be a good, contentious, tough battle, and who's going to win out and get those targets in the slot position. 2 is actually another surprise. People might think that after they acquired Gerald Everett, I think the tight end 1 position is actually one that we need to monitor as well. Between Gerald Everett and Donna Parham. Now, Donald Parham is an act of God. I mean, he's 6'8", 240 pounds, and can run. I think he was in UDFA.
Over the middle.
Yeah, huh?
Can he catch over the middle?
Oh yeah, definitely that. So, but yeah, so he to me, I think his strides and his camaraderie with Herbert can lend to the idea that he would fight for I guess they can say possessions and plays to give that extra added option between him and Everett fighting for CE1 in camp. Clearly Everett's the more physical and good yak type of tight end, and he can block a little bit better. But again, Parham is young, so I think that having a 6'8" target and a proven tight end is another good problem to have. But I think that's a position battle that we can closely monitor when it comes down to what is going to happen in camp and who wins the tight end 1 position. And the third is defense, the slot corner. We have Michael Davis as an incumbent, and we're paying Michael Davis like a lower end number 1 receiver. He got his contract a couple of years ago before Staley got there. So he's been pushed down in the depth chart with the addition of J.C. Jackson and the drafting of Asante Samuel Jr. So, and then we acquired Bryce Callahan, Rich's favorite guy, from a free agency. So I would say that we have a battle between Davis based upon his contract and his incumbency versus Bryce Callahan for that cornerback 3 position. So now my money's on Callahan, in all honesty, because that's what he does. That's who he is a slot corner. Davis has played more outside in his past life. So I would say because they're listed as inside corners, I would definitely say for sure that Callahan and Davis are going to fight for that number 3 cornerback position, that slot position. But yet again, another good problem to have is that whoever wins the job, you still have a viable number 4 corner, depending on who wins the job. So those are my top 3. Tight end position, Parham versus Everett. Slot corner position, Callahan and versus Davis, and wide receiver 3, Guyton versus Palmer.
I saw a thing I wanted to ask you about. It was, I can't remember where I saw it at, but they were tossing around a potential Deebo Samuel trade to the Chargers for like a 20, I think a first and a third.
Yeah.
I think that would be a pretty good way to make up for that third option, right?
I mean, it would, but the only issue is that you have to pay him right away.
Yeah,
and
they give up 2 picks to do it, and
exactly.
then you got just paid Williams and Allen, and yeah,
right. So that's the only thing. So I wouldn't say no necessarily to the idea of it, but how do you fit the money in? Because there's no going forward with the Chargers for me until Derwin James is signed. Like he's on his 5th-year option. That needs to get done first. Like we don't do anything else until we sign Derwin James. That's first and foremost. Yeah. Now, if you can figure out the money when it comes down to while Herbert's on his rookie deal, if you can figure out the money in a sense where you can make it work and sign Deebo to a long-term deal, which kind of would lend to the idea that Keenan Allen, once his contract is up, he's out the door. You know, would make me believe that, you know, his days are kind of numbered as being a receiver after 2 years. So, but yet again, if they can make it work and they can fit the money in, then I wouldn't say no to it. Then, you know, again, him as being the number 3 receiver, yeah, I'm all for it. You know, but
I think because that's kind of looking at the Chargers roster, I've always thought that was kind of the biggest question mark with it is outside of Williams and Allen, who's going to be that other guy to step up. You know, in crucial passing situations. I really think they're gonna. I like Everett. I think he's a serviceable tight end, but he's not a Kelsey or Waller or Mark Andrews or But he doesn't need to be.
No.
But I think the Chargers, you see him go sign someone who either gets cut heading in, kind of a training camp casualty, or someone like Will Fuller or something that's kind of just lingering around in free agency.
Yes, everybody's trying to sign me up for the Will Fuller thing. I say call Marquise Goodwin because he's on
the Seahawks, I think.
No, he never made it to the Seahawks. I checked. He never made it there. So I say I would call him before I call Will Fuller because yet again, you got PED history with Will Fuller, you got injury history with Will Fuller. You don't have that with Marquise Goodwin. Goodwin's a little bit older, but he can still run like lightning. You know, and he had a year off. So I would say I would call him first if I was going to do a free agent move. You know, but if you get somebody cheaping on the market at the end of camp, I'm for that too. But it's just a matter of it just got to be the fit got to be right. That's all that really matters. The fit got to be right.
Yeah, because I mean, how many years they have 2 or 3 left of Herbert's deal?
He's on his 3rd year, so you have next year 4th-year option. So next year will be his last year and the 5th-year option.
So they got a very small window to get something done.
They do. They do.
Because he's going to be getting the Mahomes money.
Yeah.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you like the content, we would really appreciate you guys liking the video. YouTube has an interesting algorithm where if we get more likes, we get more views because it shows up in more people's feeds. We really appreciate it if you could go ahead and do that for us, no matter which platform you're on. And if you want to go ahead and jump over to one of the other channels and do the same, we would greatly appreciate it because it really does help us.
YouTube load them all up in one browser and just like and subscribe to them all.
Oh yeah, just go for the whole shebang in one shot, right?
4 Google Chrome tabs, you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. So you made some interesting comments there, Coach.
What is this?
Who's this?
It's Ice Cube.
We know Deebo died. That's not that.
Deebo.
Come on, man. You talk about Deebo, man.
Oh Lord. Lord.
Yeah, I thought we were getting hacked or something.
No, that was Captain taking over. So with regards to some of your comments there, so I think tight end's an interesting one, because when you look at all of our respective teams, the tight end positions on the top teams. So I'm going to put Waller and Kelsey in a slightly different category because they've been proven long-term in the league. I think Albert O from the Broncos can get there pretty quickly. He's already shown to have some of the same kind of freaky blend of size and speed. And I really do. And despite going against Noah Fant last year, Albert often won a lot of those battles where he was getting targets and then got more yards after catch and some other things as well. So I do really think that Albert O has the potential of getting into that same category.
Aguabunum, right?
Albert O. I just don't even bother with the last name because I got
how you say it?
The new guy. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't even know. And I watched him playing
It's
golf.
like it's Okunebuwam or something like that. But again, there's a reason why I don't bother, because I always mess it up. It's not
but
French.
it says DZ. But
yes, but it's not French, so I can't pronounce it right. So I'm Canadian. Leave me alone. We have proper beer and maple syrup. Okay, let's just leave me alone. So with regards to just tight ends, I really think that there's a deficiency, if you will, compared to the other AFC West teams for the Chargers, where you're waiting to get the guy that can be a mismatch. Now, Parham may well be that guy for you if he can kind of develop, but he's 6'8" and 237, which is rather thin for that height. So then the question is does he get hurt a lot as he starts becoming more of the guy and not just kind of the guy that gets tossed out from time to time to kind of make some
player?
Yeah, former. But give him his respect. He put on 3 pounds in offseason. He's 240 now. Give him his respect.
Man, whole 3 pounds.
Just because the guy ate a couple pounds of bacon does not mean that he's going to be kind of a freak size mismatch at this point.
6'8", 240. That's what the media guy says. 6'8".
Right. So I'm 240 and I'm shorter than 6'8", and I certainly wouldn't look at a guy who's my weight and 6'8", which is enormous in terms of height, as being a large guy. That's a very slim dude on the football field. And when you're going against linebackers, dare I even just point out a guy like Perriman, for example, on the Raiders, you're talking a very slender guy versus a guy who's built like a tank.
Yeah, you just box him out and catch over him. Perriman's only 5'10".
Yes, but the problem is that
5'10" guy made the Pro Bowl last year with a shite ton of tackles.
Yeah, but the problem is that you can only take so much abuse when your frame is slim, and when you're in a position that often takes hits, you just got to be careful with that kind of stuff, right? It's just there's a reason why certain guys always do really well at certain positions. So when you look at tight ends, you think of Hall of Fame tight ends like Tony Gonzalez. You look at guys like Shannon Sharp. You look at
Antonio Gates, right.
They keep trying to find these former basketball players that they think will pan out.
Right, exactly. No, but you look at these dudes that are thicker, but also have height, but then have proven athleticism, which really truly puts them in that unique upper echelon of being kind of the freak athletes, which is you're 6'5", 250 pounds, and you can run the same speed as Parham, for example. Then all of a sudden you're talking some real mismatches because you're not super, super tall, but you're a thicker frame and you can absorb the impact more because your body is thicker all over, which means that you're not going to get injured as often. So, Coach, I think that's
semantics, but I mean, again, I think from a athleticism and just his overall talent speaks to the idea that he could, be a formidable sleeper target for the offense. That's what I'm like.
Yeah,
I agree. I love to see him creep into the 250s.
Yeah, I would too.
I love to see him creep into the 250s based on his height. Yeah. But man, if he can keep up the speed and keep his height and start to develop, You're not wrong. I think he can be an absolute, just incredible player for you guys. So you covered your three there, Coach, in terms of your position battles.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear what all of you have to say so far in terms of the other three, in terms of their position battles, both the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. Go ahead and leave those comments down below, and also feel free to poke fun at what my three position battles are going to be for the Denver Broncos, which are coming up right now. So moving on to the Broncos, I have wide receiver, actually, to steal a page from Alex's playbook there, where I think it's going to be really interesting in terms of the Denver Broncos wide receivers and who we keep and the reasons why we choose to keep them. And I think that's in part because we're in a bit of an offensive revamp here in Denver. I think the same can hold true for the Kansas City Chiefs, who are in a bit of a revamp in terms of their offense, because they've kind of lost the secret sauce in terms of the blazing speed, and they're going to need to then revamp their offense. So they're going to have to kind of figure out who fits and who doesn't. I also think that Captain, even though he looks frozen right now, he's going through. The Raiders are also going through an offensive revamp as well, and I think that you're going to see.
What's it called?
Yeah, please tell us.
What's that offensive scheme, Captain?
The Earhart Perkins offense under Chuck Fairbanks, not the Earhart
There it is.
Fairbanks offense. The Earhart Perkins offense under Coach Chuck Fairbanks, brought in by Coach Charlie Wise and implemented to a T by Josh McDaniel and Bill Musgraves in 2016, when Derek Carr was the candidate to be the MVP of the league. I thank you.
And created in memory of the late
Right.
great-
So the Angela Lansbury offense in the Raiders is going to be excellent. But as we look forward to the Broncos and how we're changing our offensive identity, we're not really changing it all that much. So when you look at our offensive players and when we did better than we have done in the last couple of years, we are moving back actually to that scheme, which the Raiders can also claim as well. Sadly, the reason why I am so skeptical on the Chiefs is the Chiefs in the last 5 years, when they've had their success, have never actually gone to the offense that they're basically projecting to the league. They've always had some freak athletes that have been exceptional at various positions. Right now, they're looking at spreading the ball and being more balanced, which they haven't traditionally done in the last 4 or 5 years, where they've actually been able to see success. And that's really, Alex, I'm going to be honest, the main reason why I've been skeptical and kind of slagging on the Chiefs throughout these podcasts, is because you're entering into uncharted territory for the current roster and coach that you have with the Chiefs after taking over with Patrick Mahomes coming in as quarterback. But when I look at the Denver Broncos, I'm looking at our wide receiver position, and I think it's really, really interesting to see who makes the team, who doesn't, and why. So, friend of the show at MHRT Network, Montreal Washington, as a rookie, I actually see making the team as a return guy, and also likely filling in on offense, because I think he fills dual roles, and I think that is a key combo for the Denver Broncos to fill that return role spot. Then when you look at the other wide receivers, you have Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, and then once you get outside of those, if you're going to be and Cortland Sutton, obviously. And then once you get outside of that, you start entering into big question marks. So, for example, are you wanting to backfill a speed guy? And if that's the case, you may want to look at a guy like Jalen Virgil, rookie undrafted free agent guy who is blazing fast and could help backfill KJ Hamler and perhaps even Montreal Washington on that speed role of the offense. Or do you want to go for a more possession style receiver as another guy like maybe say a Seth Williams, for example, who actually had some pretty good games when he kind of came in the latter part of the season. The weird and interesting thing with the Denver Broncos is, I think, unlike the rest of the AFC West, we have a much more balanced wide receiver group when it comes to skill sets. We have 2 or 3 guys that are really big and really tall and also quite quick for their size. We have another kind of tier, which are kind of polished route runners. And then we have another tier of speed guys. So we have a really interesting balance on our team in terms of the wide receiver core. Now, if I'm going to be perfectly honest and fair in my analysis of the Broncos offense and their roster at the wide receiver spot, we also have some guys that have not been able to stay healthy. So when you look at a guy like KJ Hamler, he has shown a tremendous amount of promise, but he just can't stay healthy and on the field. And that's a shame because when he has been on the field, he's looked exceptional. And dare I say, in many spots, he's looked better than Jerry Jeudy on the field, who was a first-round draft pick. And that's saying something because when you watch Jeudy, you can tell just how polished of a route runner he is. But wow, it's incredible. So I actually think the wide receiver is going to be one of the more interesting position group battles for the Denver Broncos this season. And for all of the reasons that I gave and more, I really do think. Oh, and we also can't forget Kendall Hinton as well.
It's your quarterback.
He's our Hall of Fame quarterback on the Denver Broncos roster for the New Orleans Saints game when he came in to fill in for the 3 other quarterbacks that were basically excluded from the game. But Kendall Hinton has actually made marked improvements every time and every year since he's converted to the wide receiver position. And he has a legitimate shot of actually being able to make this roster, in part because he has the intelligence of knowing the field like a quarterback, because that actually was his position in college. Very similar to, say, someone like, what's the guy from New England? Edelman, who was a quarterback in college and then transitioned to wide receiver. He was never the fastest guy in the field. He was never the biggest guy in the field, but he always seemed to be able to know all the little nuances of the game because he played wide receiver like a quarterback. And that was a huge benefit. And Kendall Hinton has shown that he can do some similar things. So anyways, that's a big positional group battle. And I think that's something that's really important to look at. I'm going to stick on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to again stick with the theme of the AFC West and go right tackle. I mean, shocker of the century, right? And so we signed Billy Turner, who's currently penciled in or partially put in pen as our right tackle. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, and I'm going to say that I believe Calvin Anderson is likely going to go in at right tackle for the Denver Broncos. I think Calvin Anderson, when you looked at when he came in at left tackle, was an exceptional player to fill in for Garrett Bowles when he was injured. And I do not think the Denver Broncos want to let him go at all. I think they want to keep him on the roster. And I also believe that the outside zone run scheme truly fits Anderson's skill set. He is a bigger guy that can run and has that athletic ability that you're looking for at that right tackle spot in an outside zone scheme who can block to the second level. And as long as he's able to better flip his technique to the right side, because he is clearly dare I say, a fairly gifted left tackle, as long as he can properly flip that technique to the right side, I think that he will likely be the person to beat at the right tackle for the Denver Broncos, which would then leave Billy Turner as the more complete swing player for the Denver Broncos. So he can play guard and right tackle, which is what you're looking for. I don't believe that the type of tackling you're referring to is appropriate for children on national television.
He's talking about less.
So we'll say no. But point well taken. But in terms of right tackle, we have some other options there. So we have Casey Tucker, Tom Compton, and Billy Turner, as well as Calvin Anderson. I personally have Calvin Anderson filling in as a starter at that position because I think he can truly do it. But obviously, Billy Turner is obviously not going to give up that starting role without a fight. And Tom Compton has kind of fallen off from those reps and seems to be filling in as a backup guard more so in our camp battles. So I actually think that it's between Anderson and Turner who's going to likely end up and wind up with that right tackle starting role for the Denver Broncos. But to me, much like the rest of the AFC West, the right tackle was a position we did not really address in the draft. But yet we have a kind of wait and see position battle in camp. And I think that the Raiders in a similar position. And I think the Chiefs are in a similar position. So I think that's to say that you have three teams that are highly touted coming in to the 2022 season with such a major position that's in a big question mark, I think that's rather unique. I don't think that a right tackle spot being a big question mark is a common thing to have that many question marks for so many teams, with the Chiefs seen as a top tier competitor, the Raiders seen as a top tier competitor with your quarterback being seen as a top 10, and the Broncos with Russell Wilson now being seen as an actual competitor within the division as well. Last but not least, I'm going to go to the interior defensive line as what I see as a major battle of the Denver Broncos. I think we have some interesting challenges that are going to come forth in the interior D line. I think Wazirike is likely not going to slot in as D end at the NFL level. I think he's going to slot in as a D tackle or nose tackle, depending on kind of what type of scheme you're running. I think that he can start pushing guys like McTelvin Najim and Mike Purcell for that interior spot. And I really think that interior pass rush is what let the Broncos down last year in terms of our run stopping defense. I think that once you shore up that dead center spot and have the proper depth to shore up that actual center of the D line for the Broncos, I think you're then going to end up with someone like DJ Jones at the DN spot, who will then be able to have the freedom to rush both the passer as well as stuff the run in the backfield, which he's been so good at in recent years. So for me, in terms of position battle, due to Mike Purcell's recent injury and I want to call it high draft pick, because 4th round is not necessarily a high draft pick, but still 4th round. For the interior defensive line, you get plenty of absolutely stud players in those kind of mid rounds of the draft. So I could absolutely see Wazirike overtaking Mike Purcell at the D tackle or nose tackle spot for the Denver Broncos in our defense. Curious on your guys' thoughts in terms of my 3 positional battles for the Broncos.
I just got a question. The Chargers need to have somebody named Jones on their defensive line because everybody else does.
We have spares, but I'm not willing to give anyone up.
Yeah, because we got Chandler Jones. The Chiefs got Fat Boy Jones.
We got Chris Stone Cold Jones.
Yeah, Fat Boy Jones. And then we got whoever Jones is for the Broncos.
Oh, we got 2. We got Draymond and DJ.
Right.
We got the D's.
You guys got Draymond Green on your team? Is he not playing for the Warriors anymore?
Not anymore.
No, he changed his name to DJ Jones, and now Draymond Jones, and now he's on our team.
Oh, okay. Hey. He'll still probably get a technical every time he walks on the field.
Probably.
Yeah. So I agree. You need to pull in a Jones on the roster there to really even out the division properly.
You're slacking, Coach. Get on that right away.
We got a Johnson. That's close. We got a Johnson and Joseph Day. That's close.
No, close ain't got it here.
It's like horseshoes. It's like horseshoes.
Keep it up with the Joneses.
Almost does count.
And I also wanted to call out. I saw some of the chats there. I absolutely agree. I've already stated, I think publicly, at least on MHRT Network when I was on one of the shows there, Tim Patrick will be my next jersey for the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
Very
he,
underrated.
he is, if not the most, at least in the top couple underrated wide receivers at the NFL level. He is unbelievable as a wide receiver, and
But at the same time,
very,
I
very
feel
happy.
like it comes out because you guys have an injury to where he has to produce, and like I think he's gonna. While you consider that, but it's also like in a bubble kind of consideration because he gets the stats because they got no one else because of injuries or whatnot, and I think it might be different. But I agree because he always like seemed to catch a touchdown or a nice sideline grab when you absolutely did not want it to happen.
I've seen him drop one catch that I even recall. Everything else.
Listen, he's ruined a lot of opponents' dreams in his short
And his
career.
name's Tim Patrick, just so generic.
Yeah, he's ruined a lot of people's dreams.
He went something like 15 or 16 games and didn't drop a pass.
And that's not without a legit quarterback. So who knows what's going
right. No, but that's exactly my point.
Mm.
He went and did that with a quarterback that was incredible, like it had accuracy challenges, and we'll just kind of
we'll call it that.
Yeah, we'll just call it that, right?
Right.
And so imagine what he has when he has a quarterback that throws with anticipation, timing, and accuracy.
Who's that?
Well, that would be Russell Wilson. And Sierra will be there on the sideline.
When Russell Wilson is broke in the game against the Raiders, when Chandler Jones breaks Russell Wilson in half, they're going to throw Sierra in there because she's probably a better quarterback than Hinton was, right?
Wow.
Okay.
Chandler Jones can't bend that board down because Russell Wilson is not a tall dude.
Jesus. We've officially gone off the rails.
But and then the other interesting thing, the other interesting thing that I think the rest of the AFC West needs to kind of look at is the mix of tight ends that the Broncos have currently on the roster. I think are unbelievably underrated in terms of their overall skill sets and their ability to play. Like, for example, Dylan Parham, I was actually projecting that he could well make the roster just because he made some absolutely stellar catches in last preseason. And he didn't because we only kept 3. But this year we have Albert Okonebu, we have Greg Dulcich, we have Eric Tomlinson, who's a great blocking tight end, and Eric Saubert.
And your boy Eric Saubert. He loves Eric Saubert.
Eric Saubert, honestly, may be my next Broncos jersey after Patrick, because I truly think that he is so underrated as a player, and we underused him beyond belief last year. Anyone who runs an outside zone scheme in terms of run blocking and whatnot really needs to look at Eric Saubert because I think he's a legit threat.
Well, where is it? Where is the volume coming from? Because you got Dolchis who you drafted, you got Albert O who's the incumbent, and then you got a good blocking tight end in your 3 tight end set. So where does Saubert fit in all this dynamic?
Well, if I was the one that was going to look at this right now without even having any preseason, I would bring in Albert O. I would bring in Greg Dulcich because you need to give him a shot to actually develop. Like you drafted him, you clearly saw what you wanted. He's kind of what I believe is your larger version of Noah Fant, who you think can kind of do better than him. And then Eric Saubert as my number 3. And then if you're bringing in a number 4, I would keep Parham, for example, over Tomlinson or Williams, because I actually believe that Tomlinson brings closer to a Saubert skill set than Williams does. And I saw a lot of promise from Parham in last preseason. But the kicker ultimately, though, is that 2 or 3 of the tight ends that we cut, I truly believe could do well on other teams that are playing that type of scheme. Just the Broncos have an embarrassment of riches at that position when you actually look at the preseason games and how well they played.
Okay. Okay. Now I do want to have a quick go back about your take on the right tackle. I'm high on Billy Turner because actually wish the Chargers would have signed him before you guys stole him. But regardless of that fact, I really think that Billy Turner is. I think you did steal him. You stole him from everybody because he was the best right tackle left on the market when everything all the dust settled. So I think that just based upon the fact that y'all brought him in, I think that to me is going to be a right tackle starting in week 1. But that's just me. That's just me. I mean, again, if you can play right tackle in Green Bay, you can play right tackle anywhere. That's just my take on it. So
well, I'm not going to necessarily be upset or angry if Turner is the starting right tackle. I think that Anderson showed up when he was at the left tackle spot, and he showed that he is at minimum a middling left tackle at the NFL level, which is pretty solid as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's also taken that same skill set and shown on social media and other things that he has recognized that he did extremely well. Yeah. Did you see that?
I did. That's all.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, and I think that at the end of the day, when you look at what Anderson can do in terms of his size and speed, when you're trying to block downfield. So, for example, when you saw do you remember Orlando Franklin?
I do.
Okay. So he grew up and was born, he grew up rather in an area that's about 2.5 hours to 3 hours south of me here where I live. And so he was kind of in the Toronto area where he kind of grew up. And he's made kind of several or you've seen some tape on him where he was one of the best downfield outside zone style blockers in a long time for the Broncos at the right tackle spot. Like he was angry as well, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, and so he was a big guy too who could move.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Anderson is a more athletic version of Orlando Franklin, slightly lighter than Orlando Franklin, but more mobile and therefore able to get to that second level, and also a little bit better equipped to deal with speed rushers, whereas that was Orlando Franklin's weakness, which you actually saw when we played the Seahawks in the Super Bowl and got absolutely just destroyed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he got beat by speed rush, and they realized he had issues with speed rush because he was so big he couldn't move fast enough. Whereas Anderson is a bit of a better blend in terms of size and speed, and that's why I kind of think he's a better fit at the right tackle spot with the outside zone scheme.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they signed Turner just like 1-year deal, right?
Yeah, it was a 1-year deal.
Yeah, they did. They signed Turner as a 1-year deal. Now, remember, a lot of people don't realize is Turner was with the Broncos before he was with the Packers.
Yeah.
So I do think we had
into like a 4-year deal with the Packers, didn't he, or something like?
Yes, exactly. So I think we had a bit of an inside track with him coming to us once there was some challenges with him coming back to the Packers. So I think he said, I'm happy to come back to you guys, to a familiar franchise where I'm going to make something that's reasonable and whatnot. So I think that's why we kind of stole him away from everyone else. Because
what about Glasgow? Like, you think he could be a solution at right tackle? Because I know you said
no.
That was
no. Glasgow, I actually see as potentially being more likely our starting offensive center. So I was actually participating in a Broncos podcast a couple of days ago, and my take was ultimately that I think that Glasgow could likely start at our offensive center position.
Yeah.
And because if you look at his best years in Detroit, they were when he was playing the offensive center position. And I could actually see us trading Lloyd Cushenberry for, late round or mid round draft pick to another team who's willing to take him. Mm-hmm. And then rolling with a Luke Wattenberg, who we drafted this upcoming draft, to slot in as a backup. And I think a lot of that depends on what Luke looks like in camp.
Yeah.
And I also think it depends on what Luke looks like when he's playing in the preseason. So if he looks like he's winning every battle in playing with the third strings, I could absolutely see him moving up to some second string reps to see what we have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know when you were talking about that, I was kind of looking at the depth chart, and I'm like, well, someone who's been around the league for a while is going to get kind of kicked to the curb, so to speak.
Right. And then the one guy that I think is going to be extremely interesting is going to be, well, two guys I'm going to throw on the offensive line, since we're kind of going down this rabbit hole a little bit for the Broncos, is a guy that is universally be deemed the strongest person on the entire Broncos roster in Netane Moody. I mean, some of the comments that you hear from guys on the roster about how strong he is, it's like watching fanboys comment on people. It's hilarious. He is currently slated as the backup right guard behind Quinn Miners.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where the Broncos see Dalton Risner fitting, and this is by no means me wanting Risner to be traded or to be cut or anything, I could see the Broncos looking to try to move Moody to the left guard spot and potentially looking to try and build up draft capital by trading Dalton Risner, who's been a starting left guard since he's come into the league.
That would be a mistake, Richie. I tell you what, Risner is probably your best offensive lineman on that roster.
He certainly has done the best in the outside zone scheme. The question that would then be is, do you see Risner as a long-term fit? So the question is, do you think you can truly compete now? And if the answer is yes, then I think you're right. You keep Risner and you say you're good. If you're thinking you're still a couple of years, maybe 1 or 2 years out from competing to get it back into the championship game and making it to the Super Bowl, then I think you look at the long term and avoid the short term. I think you look at a guy like Muti and say, you're too strong. You're going to push dudes out the way anyway. We'll take the slight downgrade at first and bank on you actually fitting into the system because of your strength and skill set. And look to try to compensate for the fact that we've lost our first and second round draft pick next year, to try and get some compensation back for Risner, because there's a bunch of teams inevitably over the course of the preseason that will lose starting guards, and they're going to want a guy like Risner on their team. So if you can get a third round or a second round pick for Risner, I think you take that all day long.
You lost the first and a second and a first and a second?
No, I'm saying if you get a second round pick for Risner.
No. What I'm saying is that for Wilson, you traded 2 1s and 2 2s?
2 1s and 2 2s.
Wow.
Plus players.
Yeah.
Plus Fant and Harris and
Harris. Now Harris, we're going to miss a lot.
Plus Laser and Blazer and all of them.
Yeah, so we got rid of 3 total players.
Great dodgeball reference.
Yes.
Is Risner? Is this his contract year?
Yeah, it is. It is.
And
yeah.
Did they pay Bowles?
Sorry, I should have prefaced that, but my comments are basically on the fact that this is Risner's contract year as well, and so if the Broncos do not specifically see him in their long-term plans, I personally think that that's a mistake. I think you want him to play it out to prove it, and then you basically lock in your left guard spot if you think he's the guy. But if the Broncos do not see him in their long-term plans, I think that he is a legitimate option where the Broncos would see him as a potential to trade for draft picks.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if Bowles was in a contract either, but I forgot.
Bowles has already been re-signed and is in like year, I think, 2 of his extension.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I said, the Broncos on the offensive line are in a much better position than we have been in the last, say, 2 to 3 years. However, we still have some question marks given the fact that, in my opinion, the Broncos shot ourselves in the foot by pivoting to an offensive scheme that did not fit the players we had on our roster, and has then put ourselves behind the 8 ball in order to figure out who we should keep and who we shouldn't keep and for how much. And so I think we have done ourselves a disservice to say a guy like Reisner, for example. I also think we've done ourselves a disservice to say the development of someone like Lloyd Cushenberry, who is probably better suited to an outside zone run scheme, but has shown so poorly when he was in the Munchak the Munchak offense that it's just awful.
Yeah.
Right? It's just absolutely awful. And Reisner, while he didn't give up tackles, and frankly, he played a lot better than a lot of people perceived in terms of stats, but there were certain plays at key plays where he really struggled. And I think that's where a lot of Broncos fans were kind of that's where we judged him, if you will, rightly or wrongly. And because of those kind of key plays, he kind of suffered with the fan base in terms of his, us foreshadowing him, looking ahead to say, can he be the guy, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that was necessarily fair, because I think if you actually to be more analytical and assessing things a little bit more with a fine-tooth comb, I think if you look at where we're at now, I think Reisner is probably going to be one of our best offensive linemen. But if you're looking at recouping of draft picks and thinking that you're not going to drop off that much, then you might see Moody going over to Reisner, trading Reisner for like a second, for example, if you can get it, and going in that direction so that you can recoup what you lost when you traded for Wilson.
All right now.
So that's kind of where we're at. And last but not least, Captain, I'd like to get your take on the Raiders move this past week and a half-ish with regards to your hire for I believe it's the president of football operations.
Yes, the Raiders hired the very first African-American woman to be a team president for the team. And honestly, and her name escapes me right now. I'm sure somebody will pick it up for me and they'll put it in the chat. The point that a lot of people were getting on this is that the Raiders made a move to appease the people out there, because the Raiders were coming under flack for having issues with sexism and racism. So what better way to have a black woman be your president? Now, to all of that, I say, yeah, it's the square peg in the square hole. But please look at what the lady's credentials are. Okay?
I agree.
I agree. You have a woman that knows Vegas, that was in charge of the Las Vegas Gambling Commission, that was the chairman of the Super Bowl committee for Elite. Thank you there, Matt. I knew I didn't quite have it right at the top. Thank you for
Captain
saving
Morgan.
There you go, Captain Morgan. But this young woman is quite professional, quite capable, quite accomplished, and I don't want to hear anybody say, well, it was a PR move. Because if Mark Davis is going to hire somebody as a PR move, it's going to be something that would be very short shrift, okay? You need to hire somebody that is capable and can do the job, and Sandra Douglas Morgan is that person. All of the credentials on her resume. If you don't know what her credentials are, then you need to come to my channel and spend some money, because every week Captain Jack gives you, for each member of the channel that is a paid member, a exclusive Raiders weekly update. And I speak about Miss Douglas Morgan in that update. So there's a nice little shameless plug.
You just plug Captain Plus, the Captain Plus package.
Yeah, the Captain Plus package.
Plus package.
Yeah.
I actually completely agree with that. When you look at her credentials, she's been on boards in executive roles for I believe decades, if I'm not mistaken. She is exceptionally well spoken. has been in the sports world for quite some time, also has some extensive experience with the Las Vegas Gaming Commission, which I believe is important because when the NFL is actually looking to get a little bit more involved into the gambling industry and they're using that as a revenue stream, I also think that the Raiders have appropriately positioned themselves with an executive that can actually perhaps be leveraged, dare I use that word, to help give them some insider baseball in terms of what they need to do to fast track certain things. So I actually think it was a rather smart move by the Davis family, including Mark Davis. And I also think that we need to put aside this whole the Raiders were in trouble, so then they kind of did the thing that they thought would appease people. The Davis family has a long-standing history of bucking trends and setting trends in the NFL. And I think that we need to just kind of put aside whatever stigma you wish to have surrounding the Raiders organization and actually be far more objective when you look at things and see what they've done to date. You can have any opinion you want of the now Las Vegas Raiders as a rival within the division, but they have done some incredible things in the NFL. And to be quite honest, if we're going to be fair, the AFC West has been one of the more progressive divisions in the NFL, if that is the way in which you wish to look through the lens of the NFL. And the Broncos, the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders have all done things at the NFL level that have often been firsts from a progressive standpoint. So if that's the lens in which you wish to look at the NFL through, I think it's important that you look at those things and stop slandering an organization that you may not be overly fond of when this is not an abnormal thing. This is basically right within the typical wheelhouse of the organization themselves.
Thank you. That tears me up inside.
Well, I mean, I can't disagree with that. With the Chargers, I feel like they've been a highly diversified organization. One of the reasons why, proud to be a Chargers fan. So I definitely can, share that sentiment in certain regards. Now, I think, you made a mistake with the Gruden thing, but outside of that, I think with Art Shell, Amy Trask, now Sandra Douglas Morgan, countless other things they've done. I think two things can be true in her hire. I think she's qualified. I think she's right for the job. She was ready for the job, and she's also can clean up the mishaps that have been going on in the organization. So I think based upon her introductory conference and her press conference that she's a no nonsense kind of girl, kind of lady. So I think that she will, get things right that weren't right, in the organization that were things that people kind of turn their nose up at. So I think that in addition to being a good executive, that if there's anything wrong in the organization under the covers, that she'll write it. So I'm all for the hire.
I was going to say, you forget Eldridge Dickey. You forget the historically black colleges that Al Davis was drafting from. You forget Tom Flores.
Oh, well, I wasn't going to go into the whole history of the Raiders.
You forget Carl Nassib. No,
listen, kudos to all of that, Cap. I just didn't want to give the elongated list. That's why we have Google. But I definitely give them kudos.
Yes, right.
Been a lot of firsts in the things that they've done.
Yes.
GPS or call the captain.
Well, that's true.
Right. So guys, we're coming up on a time where we need to wrap up this particular episode of the Wednesday Wild Wild West podcast.
I'm not sure anybody can give us some of that, Rob.
I don't disagree with that either.
Robert, one can only hope.
Yes.
And then I think we all woke up and the reality is still the same.
Yeah.
However, it's been a great episode, guys. I think we really covered a lot of ground and we went into a lot of details. I think that's amazing. We have an interesting season coming up for the AFC West. That's one of the reasons why we all started this podcast and wanted to have you join us. If you have any comments, questions, or you would like to reach out to any one of us, most of our Twitter handles are actually the names that we go by here or directly below our faces here on the podcast. We each have our own channels for the most part there, and you can find those down in the description down below. We'd appreciate if you could all like and subscribe to those channels. And again, until we see you next week on Wednesday. The West Side is the best side. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, get it again.